At 4:17 a.m., I stared at the ceiling like it owed me an answer. The shadows on the wall shifted with the headlights outside, flickering over the empty side of the bed, still made, pillow untouched. I had run my hand across the sheet hours ago, just to be sure. Cold. She hadn't come home. The house didn't creak anymore. It had given up expecting her. Only the fridge buzzed in the silence like some quiet metronome counting down the end of something I hadn't wanted to believe was ending. By 5 o'clock, I stopped checking my phone. There was no missed call, no battery died excuse, no headed home now text with a heart emoji at the end, just nothing. Her last message was at 9:42 the night before. Love you, it read. But I remember the way she typed it lately, without punctuation, without pause, like a muscle reflex, not a feeling. If you're still watching and haven't subscribed yet, take 2 seconds now. It means more than you know, and helps us keep telling stories like this. I boiled water, made coffee, not because I needed it, but because routine was all I had left that morning. The ceramic mug warmed my hands. I stared at the front door, waiting to hear the sound of keys, waiting to hear the click of her heels on tile, the fake surprise in her voice. You're up early. At 7:03, the handle turned. She stepped in barefoot, holding her shoes like a teenager sneaking in past curfew. Her eyeliner was smudged, lipstick faded to a faint stain, her eyes blinked too slow, like the room was brighter than expected, and she froze when she saw me still there, still watching, still silent. Hey, she said casually, like it was nothing, like she hadn't just torn a seam in the fabric of trust. I didn't ask her where she'd been, didn't ask why her phone was off, didn't ask who. I just set the mug down on the counter with care, walked over to the drawer, and pulled out a yellow legal pad. Wrote slowly, 6 words. I'm done. Good luck with your upgrade. I tore the page clean, folded it once, and laid it on the table. Then I walked past her smeared makeup and clumsy silence, past the perfume that wasn't hers. I didn't slam the door, just closed it gently, like I was sealing a box I never meant to open again. In the driveway, the air felt different, like it belonged to me again. I got in the car, didn't look back, didn't check if she'd followed, because when someone shows you how easily they forget you exist for a night, you remember how long you've been pretending it didn't hurt. And I was done pretending. The drive was quiet, not numb, just clean, like my mind had finally stopped running in circles and was now following a straight line. I didn't go to work. I passed it, didn't even glance at the glass lobby. Instead, I headed west, down past the strip mall, through the industrial turnoff, and into the rental storage complex where Unit 106 sat, tucked between a landscaping firm's backup snowblower and someone's boat they never used. I punched in the code. The gate rattled open. Sunlight spilled across the asphalt in long, pale streaks. When I lifted the roll-up door, the stale air met me like an old secret. It was all there, just as I left it. The blue file box with the cracked plastic handle. One box, one plan, one quiet exit strategy I prayed I'd never need. I squatted down and clicked the latches open. Inside were folders, color-coded and dated, account separation documents, a mortgage freeze form with the bank rep's name still paper-clipped to the top, inventory logs for joint assets, art, furniture, the wedding china we used twice, a notarized copy of our prenup signed before the ceremony with nervous hands and forced laughter. And then, at the very bottom, under a sheet of bubble wrap, the envelope, white, sealed, my handwriting on the front, Activation Jessica. I sat cross-legged on the cold concrete and just stared at it for a moment. Not out of hesitation, just acknowledgement. This was the moment I'd been trying not to see for months. The invisible line we tiptoed around until she crossed it barefoot at 7:03 a.m. with her heels in her hand and someone else's scent on her skin. I pulled out my phone and dialed. Madeline, I said when she picked up. She knew my voice too well to ask how I was. It happened. A pause, then a sigh. You sure? She stayed out all night. Another beat. Okay, I'll activate the accounts. We'll start with the freeze. Want to come in today? No, just send the first packet to her email. Use the soft version. Madeline always had 2 versions. One that said, I'm disappointed but civil, and one that said, I saw this coming, and you're already 3 steps behind. She'd get the first one. For now. I hung up and pulled the envelope out, weighed it in my hand. It didn't feel like power. It felt like grief turned into paper. But I hadn't come here to cry. I came here because I'd already cried. Months ago, the first time I saw her flinch when I reached for her hand. The first time she left for book club in a dress she hadn't worn since Cabo. The first time she laughed too hard at a message I never saw. This wasn't anger anymore. This was infrastructure, and it was built for this. I locked the unit, reset the code, and walked back to my car without looking back. This wasn't an ending written in fire. It was a blueprint finally being followed. 2 days after I left the note, I texted Madeline one word, Ryan. It didn't need explanation. She knew. The friend from college Jessica had suddenly reconnected with, the one she insisted was harmless. Just someone who helped her feel seen again. I remembered that phrase because it hit like a slap when she said it in passing last month over wine, like she didn't notice what it meant to say that to the person who'd built a life with her. Friend, she said. So I asked my lawyer to find out exactly what kind of friend he was. By afternoon, she called me back, tone-clipped and professional, but I could hear the edge beneath it. Got it, she said. Give it to me straight. Madeline always did. Fired from 2 jobs in 3 years, both for cause. One HR file mentions repeated boundary violations with female coworkers. That's coded language. You know what it means. I nodded to myself. Go on? Restraining order filed in 2010 by an ex-girlfriend, dropped after 6 months but still public record. My grip tightened on the phone. 3 bounced checks since August, she added. Oh, and this is Rich. Last week he applied for a $15,000 credit line. Guess who he listed as a reference? Jessica. She didn't even ask if I was sitting down. She knew I wouldn't flinch. She's trading a house key for an apartment deposit, Madeline said dryly. I looked out the window at the gatehouse. Thought about the man I'd once watched bring her a coffee during her art show setup. This charming, harmless friend who didn't even make eye contact with me. I said nothing. Just opened the property security app and typed in his name, added it to the do not admit list with a click, then marked it permanent. No explanation needed. He wouldn't be getting through the gate again. Not to drop her off, not to pick her up, not to play boyfriend on a borrowed driveway, not under my roof. They didn't know I'd already moved half our shared funds to a separate account, that I'd already rerouted the mortgage payments to my name only, that the next time Jessica tried to update her address with the bank, it would flag an alert to my attorney. I was no longer competing with Ryan. That would have implied he was equal. He wasn't. He was a detail in the audit trail, a footnote on the dissolution timeline, a name that would never cross the threshold of the home I once held sacred. Jessica didn't know yet, but the moment she tied herself to him, she stopped standing on solid ground. And I wasn't going to pull her out. I was just going to watch, quietly, completely, while she realized who she'd chosen over the man who knew how to build, and the one who only knew how to ask. By the next morning, I'd done the math. Not the emotional kind, the real kind. Balances, assets, risk thresholds. I opened my laptop, logged into every system with her name attached, and began the quiet extraction. First, the cards. The joint one we use for groceries and travel. Deactivated. The gas card I once added her to when she started that short-lived commute job. Gone. I issued a notice to the bank. Temporary fraud concern. Low-key, non-confrontational. Then the codes. Garage, front door, guest entry, all reset. The new sequence was based on the date I met her. I figured if she still remembered it, she didn't deserve to use it. The joint account, frozen, not closed, just enough activity permitted to avoid flags. A drip, not a flow. I calculated the cushion she'd need to avoid suspicion and made sure it was there. I wasn't trying to ruin her. I was removing her. Midday, my phone buzzed. Jessica. Did something happen with the bank? I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed, yes. No punctuation, no elaboration. I sent it and turned the phone face down. She didn't reply. Not right away, but at 6:13 p.m., the alarm system pinged me, a failed access attempt at the front door, 3 tries, then silence. Then my phone rang. I let it buzz twice before I picked up. Her voice was tight, not panicked, yet. Why can't I get in? I took a breath. You're not on the lease anymore. There was a pause, not even a gasp, just silence, like she couldn't find the right lie fast enough. What? She said, sharp now. I had your name removed last week. You can't do that. I already did. I live there. You used to. Another silence. You're being cruel, she said, quieter this time. No, I'm being clear. She hung up. I stared at the phone a little longer than I meant to, then turned it off. 'Cause here's the thing, she thought this was a reaction, a tantrum, a man acting out because he got his heart broken. She didn't understand this wasn't the start of anything, it was the conclusion. She thought I was playing chess when I'd already walked off the board. The alarm system pinged again at 8:42. Another failed code. She hadn't learned, or maybe she couldn't accept it. Either way, I didn't respond. I just opened the settings, blocked her number from triggering alerts, and poured myself a drink. The house didn't feel empty, it felt clean. We met at the corner cafe near Madeline's office. She didn't ask how I was doing, just slid a tablet across the table and opened a file marked Phase 2. Ready? She asked, already knowing the answer. I nodded and picked up the pen. We weren't talking about closure. We were talking about execution. First up, the house. Months ago, Madeline had helped me set up a real estate trust, a quiet maneuver under the guise of estate planning. At the time, Jessica hadn't even blinked, just signed the notary page, distracted by her phone, maybe texting him. Now, with 2 signatures and a final filing, the trust was active. Sole beneficiary, me. The deed's clear, Madeline said. She has no claim, no recourse. Next, our dog, Scout. He was mine from before we met. She loved posting pictures with him, but never walked him, never paid for his vet visits. She once joked that he was the third wheel in our marriage. Now he was staying with me. I initialed the pet custody agreement. No contest expected. Then came the car. The Lexus was leased under both our names, but I'd been making the payments. We bought it together 2 years ago. Well, I bought it. She picked the color. Pearl white. I contacted the dealership, wired the remainder, and had the title updated in my name. She wouldn't notice for a while. Maybe not until she got a notification from her insurance app. Maybe not until Ryan asked, "Hey, why does the DMV say it's not yours?" Madeline poured herself more tea, then handed me the mail documents. "And this," she said, "is the fun part. We'd set up a mail forwarding service last week. Nothing suspicious, just a generic logistics and sorting company with a P.O. box redirect. All mail in her name had been quietly rerouted. As of this morning, it was being delivered to a location on Maple Drive. Ryan's apartment. She hadn't even noticed. Or maybe she assumed it was just delays. A glitch, the universe dragging its feet on her behalf. But I wasn't the universe. I was the man she underestimated. I sipped my coffee while Madeline finalized the filing logs. Each action was quiet, legal, precise, the kind of cuts you don't feel until you've already bled out. Jessica still had her Instagram full of brunches and sunsets, still had her gym membership and her automatic payments for streaming apps, still thought maybe this was temporary, a standoff, a phase. She didn't see what we'd already filed, didn't know what forms had been notarized, submitted, and sealed, didn't realize that every hallway she'd walked with me was now owned without her. She thought silence meant softness. It didn't. It meant structure. Every exit light she ignored, I'd already marked green. And when the lights finally dimmed on her end, she'd think it happened all at once. She wouldn't know we'd been flipping switches for days. 3 days after she vanished again, no text, no explanations, not even a breadcrumb of pretend remorse. My phone lit up at 10:42 a.m. "Jessica, are we really doing this?" That was the message. No greeting, no apology, just a lazy question like I'd forgotten to finish a conversation we never started. I read it once, then once more, then locked my phone and set it face down. She wasn't asking out of confusion. She was testing to see if I'd fold, if the silence meant pause instead of closure, if I was just waiting for the next fight, the next round, the next cycle. But I wasn't waiting anymore, so I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up a manila envelope I'd already prepared 2 nights before. It sat beside my keys like a sealed truth. I drove it across town and handed it off at the counter of her building's concierge, no signature required. Just a quiet delivery to the name on the lease Ryan barely qualified for. Inside the envelope were 3 things. 1, a clean copy of our prenup, highlighted clauses, her original signature circled in blue. 2, a simple inventory list of every asset I'd already moved out of reach, property, accounts, legal entitlements, all of it accounted for, all of it clean. And 3, a yellow post-it stuck dead center in the fold. It read, "I won't contest what's yours. Please don't insult what was mine." No punctuation, no anger, just a fact. I left the building without waiting to see if she was home. I didn't care. The words were there now, in her hands, where she couldn't spin them. couldn't cry them into submission or flirt them into delay. That night, she called. Twice. I let them both go to voicemail. Her voice cracked in the second one. I deleted it before the end. By midnight, she tried again. This time, email. Subject line, "Can we talk?" No message in the body, just those 4 words, white text on a blank field. I stared at it longer than I meant to, let the cursor hover over reply. Then I closed the laptop. Because the truth is, when someone thinks silence is weakness, they don't know what strength it takes to keep it. She wanted conversation, closure, a flicker of the old back and forth that always led her home. But there was no home, not for her. And I didn't need to explain why. I'd already said everything worth saying, with a post-it and a door she'd already locked from the other side. She asked for coffee like it was nothing, like we were just 2 old friends picking up after a misunderstanding. The message read, "Just 1 cup? I think we owe each other that much. No drama. I just want closure." I chose a place neither of us had ever been. Neutral ground. No history. No ghosts in the wallpaper. A cafe tucked between a flower shop and a framing store on the quieter side of town. A place where no one would recognize us, because by now I didn't recognize her either. She was already there when I arrived. Back booth. Sunglasses on, even though the light was soft and the window behind her looked out onto nothing but gray sky. Her nails were different, shorter, unpainted. She looked smaller somehow, as if the last week had quietly deflated her. She stood when I walked over, then hesitated like she wasn't sure whether to hug me or not. I gave her a polite nod and sat down. "Thanks for coming," she said. I said nothing, just waited. She cleared her throat, folded and refolded her napkin. I was just lost. I nodded, nothing sarcastic, just acknowledgement. "I thought you didn't care," she said next, softer. I took a breath, then answered the way I'd rehearsed, not bitter, not broken. "I cared enough to let you be free." She blinked quickly, then looked down, blinking harder. Her shoulders shook once, then again. She pulled off the sunglasses and wiped her eyes. "I didn't expect you to be so calm," she whispered. That made me smile, just barely. "You expected anger, punishment." She didn't answer. Didn't need to. I reached across the table and slid the napkin toward her, just in case she needed something to hold on to. She took it with a trembling hand. We sat like that for a moment, me steady, her unraveling quietly in a cafe that didn't know either of us. I stood first. "There's nothing left to split," I said. "Just memories." She looked up at me, mascara smudging beneath her eyes. "Keep what helps," I added. "Forget what doesn't." Her lips parted like she had more to say, but I didn't wait. I walked out slowly, letting the door chime once behind me. There was no fire in her eyes, no final plea, just silence. And it felt right, not triumphant, not vindictive, just final. She'd come for closure. I brought her a mirror. The email came on a Tuesday morning. Subject line, "Concern for Jessica." I knew the sender before I opened it. The name sat there like a typo I didn't want to correct. Ryan D. He opened with civility, like we were 2 reasonable men having a civilized disagreement over a restaurant bill. "I wanted to reach out as a friend," he wrote, "and Jessica's been struggling emotionally since the separation, and I'm concerned for her well-being. I understand things ended abruptly, and I respect that, but I wonder if you'd consider restoring some financial fairness to help her land on her feet." He even threw in a line about building peace, not walls. It was the kind of email people send when they mistake silence for surrender. I didn't reply, just screenshot it and sent it to Madeline with one line, "Your move." Her response came 12 minutes later. Already on it. By noon, she'd drafted the cease and desist. The body was clean, surgical, not a single wasted word, just a formal record of unwanted contact, a reminder that Ryan had no legal standing, and a warning that any future messages would be considered harassment and forwarded to authorities. Then she attached 3 files to the notice. First, a summary of Ryan's employment history, both terminations, time-stamped and signed off by HR departments. Second, a copy of the lease application he filed last month, listing Jessica as a financial co-supporter. The PDF was sloppy, handwritten, a red flag in every field. Third, screenshots, Jessica's own messages from that night, the ones that began with "Don't wait up" and ended with a photo of her and Ryan at a bar I'd never been invited to. All admissible, all dated, all damning. We sent it to both their emails. No BCC, no blind copies, just full transparency, lit in digital ink. No response came. But 2 weeks later, a friend of mine who still shared a gym with Jessica's cousin dropped a casual line during a jog. "Hey, did you hear? Ryan moved out. Jess is staying at her mom's now." I didn't ask why, didn't need to, because desperation always folds under documentation. They thought I'd snap, thought I'd melt into negotiation or maybe guilt. Instead, I stayed quiet, documented, precise. When they reached out to shake the tree, they forgot the roots were made of legal stone. They poked the bear, and the bear called his attorney. The notice came by courier, hand-delivered like it might carry something dangerous. I opened it over the sink, let the envelope fall into the basin like it might still be warm. Jessica had filed a petition, emotional distress, claiming the separation had caused her significant psychological hardship, that the financial outcomes had been excessively punitive, and the pace of dissolution unreasonably abrupt. It was dressed in careful language, probably not her words, likely Ryan's suggestion or someone else's attempt to reverse engineer leverage where there was none. Madeline read it first, called me 5 minutes later. "This is her last card," she said. "Will it work? It's not even suited to the table." The court date was set for a Thursday. I didn't go. Madeline represented me, just like we planned. Everything was already filed, every timestamp, every email, every document she'd signed with her own hand. The prenup alone was airtight, but the context made it bulletproof. Jessica walked into the courtroom with a soft sweater and no makeup, plain sincerity like a script. The judge didn't even let it run past the second act. He read the paperwork, glanced at the dates, and said one line: "There's no evidence of breach, coercion, or cruelty. Petition denied." Just like that. No lecture, no long discussion, dismissed in minutes. She walked out like someone had just cut the power to the whole building, and she was the only one still flipping switches. I heard about it secondhand. Madeline called later and said, "It's done, quietest courtroom I've ever sat in." That night, I got the text, "Jessica, you didn't even fight." I stared at it for a while. I imagined her typing it out on her mother's couch, knees pulled up, phone screen lighting her face. Maybe she thought that line would sting. Maybe she believed it meant something, like I'd finally see what I lost. I typed my reply slowly, only one sentence. That was the point. Then I turned off the phone and set it in the drawer beside the prenup and the final statement of dissolution, because the truth was, there was never going to be a showdown. No courtroom drama, no last-minute reconciliation. No fight, only exit, and it had already happened. So quietly, so deliberately, she never saw it until the last door had closed. The Pacific air had a different weight to it, quieter somehow. The mornings weren't rushed here. No car alarms, no mail slamming through a slot like a warning shot, just the hush of the trees and the occasional hum of a neighbor's wind chimes. I didn't think I'd ever live by woods, but Oregon had a way of making you reconsider what peace looks like. I bought a smaller place, modest, clean lines, wide porch, no shared walls. A dog bed sat in the corner, Scout curled into it like he'd finally settled too. I worked less, cooked more, answered emails when I felt like it. Most days, I ate dinner on the deck. Just me, a plate of something simple, and the sound of wind moving through pine. It was on one of those evenings, late September, the last warm stretch before the rains returned, that I checked the mailbox and saw it, no return address, just my name, written in a slanted hand I hadn't seen in months, but would still recognize in the dark. I carried it inside, not rushed, set it on the counter and poured a glass of wine, let the envelope sit there like a test I'd already passed. Eventually I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of yellow paper, the same note I left on the table that morning, back when the coffee was still warm and the bed still untouched. "I'm done. Good luck with your upgrade." She'd kept it, folded, clean down the center, edges worn. But on the back, in new ink, were 7 words. "You were never the problem. I was." No explanation, no signature, no ask for contact or reply, just an acknowledgement, late but true. I stood there for a while, holding it between my fingers, Scout's tail thudding against the floor like a soft reminder that we'd already moved on. I folded the note again, tucked it into the drawer where I kept things I didn't need but couldn't throw away. Then I went back outside. My plate was still warm. The trees hadn't gone anywhere. There was no music playing, no epiphany moment, just silence and dinner and air I didn't have to hold my breath in anymore. Some people think closure is a door you slam, but sometimes it's just a letter you don't need to answer.